Hello, everybody. We are beginning, and we had a couple little technical glitches there. I'm glad we managed to get through them. So I'm really excited to be here. I'm actually coming to you live from Oslo at the moment, and I'm at the beginning of a long tour here, so this is where I'm going to be doing the webinar from. And today, we're going to be talking about entrepreneurship and business freedom. And I want to take a moment and kind of acknowledge you, because I know there are a million things that one can do with their time these days. There's ever so many different options online and different events out in the real world. So that you are here spending this time with me online right now is I just want to acknowledge you for that and thank you for being here. And I'm going to make it worth your while. I also just want to point out, I just love this. Like I travel a lot to speak all over the world. As I say, I'm here in Oslo at the moment. And what I really love is when I can do an event like this where I didn't have to travel for this particular webinar, and I've seen people registering from all over Europe, from South Africa, from a number of countries in Asia, Australia, New Zealand. There's some really obscure Tuvalu. What's Tuvalu doing here? So in any event, I'm really glad that you guys are all here, and let's talk business. So, you know, I talk a lot about a number of different things in business, and today I wanted to start with something really different, I think, and that is that because I'm out speaking quite often about how to make businesses work, I sometimes forget that I learned that by making them not work. In other words, while we're going to focus on this webinar on business freedom, in order for us to fully understand what business freedom is, I think we have to spend some time talking about what business freedom isn't. Entrepreneurship is inherently, well, challenging, and a lot of times I think when we start a business, I mean, first of all, school does not typically set us up as entrepreneurs. The typical model of school these days is to really prepare people for being good employees. If you think about it, you know, you walk into the school, you're in the school grounds, the bell goes. Oh, school's starting. Sit in your class, the bell goes. Oh, change shift to the next class. Oh, bell goes, it's time for lunch, and so on, right? Till the final bell goes, and off we run to do our lives at home. And so many people end up taking jobs just like that. You know, you started off in school, then you move to a job. And so then one day what happens to some of us is we go, you know, this job, I'm not really enjoying it so much, or I don't feel the degree of freedom that I'd like to be having in this job, or I don't get to do what I like to do on a daily basis. And so you know what? I'm done with this job. And then we start a business. Others go right into business from the outset. Either way, we encounter some very similar things. And that is that business, while it is possible for business to provide a significantly higher amount of freedom than employment or having a job does, the truth is for most people it doesn't immediately work out that way. The truth is that for most people business starts out difficult. It starts out as a challenge. It starts out taking out time. And so I thought I'd share a little bit with you about my personal journey of moving from employment into entrepreneurship, and then pepper within that some nuggets of information or nuggets of distinctions that I've made through making really a lot of mistakes and recognizing that I didn't have to make those same mistakes again. Truly, the only mistake I think you can really make in business is to make the same mistake more than once. It's totally great to make a mistake once. You've learned from that. As long as you're willing to learn from it and move on, that's great. When you start finding yourself making the same mistake again and again and again, that's where the challenges are. Or when you find yourself making a mistake that, well, you've heard that somebody else made and now you're repeating that mistake, you have to ask yourself what's going on there. Like, shouldn't you be able to learn from the mistakes that I made or the mistakes that some other entrepreneurs like Richard Branson or Bill Gates made out there? Because they've made them too. And so I want to share this story with you because I've made those mistakes, and I've got little distinctions that might provide shortcuts for you. They might make things happen more quickly when previously they were taking a longer time. They might help you to increase your revenues more or attract the right people to work with you. And I found out a lot of those things by doing it wrong the first time around. So here's what it was like for me. I was working in a job. I love the acronym for job. I know many of you have heard this. It's common enough now that we could call it a cliche. I still love it. Job stands for just over broke. And I was in a job that actually wasn't just over broke. I was actually being paid really quite well. The company I was working for, and in particular the entrepreneur I was working for, not somebody that I could look up to and not somebody I really wanted to continue working for. His word was not his bond. His word was not worth a great deal to me at that stage of our relationship. And I learned a great deal from him. He's a highly intelligent guy. I just got to a stage where my soul was worth more than staying in that job. And so one day I took this step, the first step for many of entrepreneurship. I quit my job, and it was time for celebration. I was so excited about it. And I have to back up and let you know there's a couple of things that are important here. I was living in a brand new country because the job I'd had for 7 years had given me the opportunity to relocate to live in England. So now I was living in England, and I'd been in England for about a month when I had this falling out with my employer and quit my job. So now I'm in a new country. Oh, and also, because I had steady employment for like 7 years, my wife at the time and I thought it would be a great time to start a family. So about a month before that, we started, starting a family. And then as soon as I quit my job, I said, well, wait a minute now. We're in a new country. I got to do something else. I got to get a new job or start a business or something. So this is not a good time to start a family. So we stopped trying to do that. It turns out that sometimes it's a lot easier than you think. And suddenly it turned out we were pregnant. And so now we had a child on the way, a brand new country, no job. And what started off being really exciting started getting a little scary. And so now I moved into business planning mode, because one of the tough, difficult parts here was, and it was a great gift to me as I look back on it now, one of the challenges I had at the time was that I wasn't legally yet permitted to have a job in England. And here I was with a house and a wife and a car and 2 cars and a new dog, and I suddenly recognized I couldn't go out and get a job. I didn't have a work visa yet. It was coming, but it was going to take months. And so I was kind of stuck, like, what do I do at this stage? And oddly, the only thing I could think to do was to start a business. And I'd always wanted to. I'd always wanted to be my own boss, in charge of my own destiny. And so I did. And now I entered the first phase of business freedom, and that is the dreamer phase. That's where I got to do lots of planning and business planning and logo design and brochures and websites. It was ever so exciting. And this went on for about a week or two until I recognized that if I didn't sell something pretty soon, I was going to be in trouble. And then I entered the next phase of business, and that is the I gotta bring money in the door phase. And then over the next couple of years, as I worked to grow my business, I would experience levels of stress that I'd never previously even considered to be possible. Cash flow stress, people stress, deadlines imposed by clients and suppliers. It was really a challenging time in my life. In fact, it took me about 5 or 6 years to grow that business to the point of doing about $1 million in revenue in my business. And during that 5 or 6 years, I really, really had to work hard. There was a huge amount of hard work, a tremendous amount of sacrifice, all kinds of family issues in the middle. My health was suffering. I mean, that was entrepreneurship. And as I went and spoke to the entrepreneurs around me, I found something out. It was like that for them too. And I thought to myself, this is really challenging. Like when I had a job, it wasn't so hard. I mean, okay, I had to answer to somebody else, but now I feel like I'm answering to a ton of people. I got to answer to the bank. I got to answer to my suppliers. I got to answer to the customers. And I got to answer to all my employees. I suddenly went from having like one boss to like having many. Now, during this process, as I said before, I made a number of mistakes, and I learned from them. And so not only did I go, like, it took me 5 or 6 years to break that $1 million a year in revenue, it only took me 1 year to break it again to get to 2. It was that quick. And it only took me another year again to break it to 4. So once I got to a learning cycle place, once I'd recognized that I could learn from these mistakes, I started being able to create exponential growth in my business. And this translated later, because I've had a number of different businesses over the years. And one of my subsequent businesses, instead of taking 5 or 6 years to break $1 million, we broke $1 million in the first 18 months. We got to a 12 months of revenue in 18 months, and then continue to grow rapidly. So the good news here, is that we can learn. We can learn and create learning cycles and take shortcuts and not have to make the same mistakes twice. The better news is that we can learn from other people. You can learn from me. I can learn from you. I've learned from some incredible giants in the business industry and the industry of entrepreneurship. I've been blessed to be introduced to Richard Branson, and of course I've read everything he's ever written and really followed a lot of his principles around branding. I've really been blessed. I was introduced to Michael Gerber as a young man, and that helped me a great deal. Other people have influenced me, Stephen Covey, of course, Tony Robbins, and Chet Holmes, and many others. And so I was very fortunate to have these people guiding me through the process, and I was fortunate to know that I could learn from these mistakes and shorten the cycle. And that's what I want to help you do today. So one of the things I want to describe to you is something I learned early on in the business, and I thank God for it, and here's why. 2 people started businesses the same time I did. me and a competitor. We had both been working for the same company, and within the same 2 or 3 months, we started almost identical types of businesses. 5 years later, I had 40 employees, and he had 3. Now, in the middle of that 5 years, I had moments where I thought maybe he'd gone the right path. I mean, he was only focusing on sales and bringing in revenue and driving really fancy cars. And I, on the other hand, was building a business that in the 6th year would afford me the next level of business freedom. And that was that on a day-by-day basis, I didn't have to go there. On a day-by-day basis, if I, for 1 or 2 days in a row, if I chose simply not to go to work, I didn't have to be there. The business was no longer demanding me. And then within about 6 months of that, I approached the next phase, and that was that if I wanted to leave for a month or 2 at a time, it was no problem. Not only was it no problem, often the business would go through little spurts of growth when I wasn't around, because I learned something else about business, and that is that every time I micromanage stuff, I often slow it down. And so you get to this phase where your business can really be best managed by you injecting stuff when it's needed and not on a day-to-day basis. One of the distinctions here is the distinction between working inside your business and working on it. Now, there's one mistake in business that most of us have made. And so there's 2 ways to deal with this. 1, don't make this mistake. Or 2, which is even better, make this mistake and do it properly. Are you ready? Here's the mistake. Now again, what I said is this is a mistake that you either should not make, or if you make it properly, it can give you huge rewards. In other words, it's not a mistake. The mistake is starting a business or building a company around you and your core skill set. Now, this happens all the time. Somebody works for a company and they have a job within that company, and they decide one day, oh, I'll start my own company. It'll be brilliant and amazing. And so they start their own company. And then they find out that they built that company around their own core skill set. So now not only are they having to manage a company, they're having to also do their job while running the company. Ask any practitioner about this, or sole proprietor. You know, you often see this with chiropractors and dentists and that sort of, you know, they start their practice, and now not only are they having to work with patients, they're also having to hire and fire and recruit and train and accounting and marketing. They're having to do everything and their job. And so it's like, whoa, why did I go into private practice? Well, I'll tell you right now, I don't care whether you're a dentist, doctor, or whatever business you have, even if you are in that normal practitioner or normal sort of cowboy mode where I'm going to do this on my own. No matter what kind of business you have, you can absolutely translate to a place where you don't have to be inside the business. So one mistake to avoid doing is don't do that. Don't build a business around your core skill set. I bought a company one day that did Hollywood special effects. The experience I had had with Hollywood special effects up until that point in time, watching movies. I was not an engineer, I was not a technician, I was not a creative artist. And so what that allowed me to do is buy the company and work on the business, not be inside it all the time. And so that's one way to handle entrepreneurship. Don't make that fundamental mistake. Now, I know many of you are going, whoa, whoa, Eric, you're way too late. I already did that. I have good news for you. If you make that mistake, it can be one of the biggest gifts you ever give yourself if you do it properly. Here's what I mean by properly. One of my very early business mentors absolutely loves stock market trading, loves it, lives for it, understands the markets, has a keen sense of timing, loves the art of the deal, chasing down early IPO opportunities. He just loves it. And he started a brokerage company. Well, his brokerage company works like this. He doesn't manage it. He doesn't manage it on a day-to-day basis. He has people that do that. And now he has 2 desks. One for when he has to have executive owner level meetings, and the other desk is on the trading floor. He gets down in there. When the bell rings, he's in there buying, selling, cutting the deals, making it happen. And then at night, when he wants to meet with clients and stuff, yeah, of course, he's the owner of the business and he's got that desk, and he is in flow. He loves it. And so we can do the same thing, where if we have made that first mistake of entrepreneurship and built a company around our skill set, we can then begin to build the business in such a way that we get to do that work and not have to manage the business. So I want to show you scalability and how much easier it is than you maybe recognize. No matter how big your business is today, whether you're on your own or you have 100 employees, I want you to hear this, because I've done it in businesses of all sizes, and what I'm about to show you is one of the most valuable things I teach in business, and it's so simple that you might be fooled in believing it's not that valuable. Are you ready? Now, before I do this, I want you to know something about this webinar. it runs on a little bit of a delay. In other words, what I'm saying right now, you won't hear for 45 seconds. So that means if you ask a question, it might be 45 seconds late. So we will be taking live questions through this webinar, which you can type into the chat window, you can put on my Facebook page, you can throw it on Twitter, you can put them privately or publicly, whatever you like. And then once you've posted them there, Jackie's going to jump in and read some of those questions to me so I can answer them directly. So as I'm giving you this stuff, please jump in. Some of the best stuff that we're going to come up with tonight is going to come from your questions. Because, you know, I can think I know what you want to know, and it would be a whole much better if you told me what you wanted to know. So let's start with this one tool, and let's see where the conversation takes us. This one tool is a novel approach to the way you look at organizational charts. It's a novel approach to the way you look at organizational charts. Now, this is going to be a whole lot of fun, and I don't have graphs and slides for you. And one other thing, I think some of you have seen, I posted on Facebook today, I have really good news for you about this webinar. I'm not going to sell anything. There is no opportunity for you to buy something from this webinar. It is not a sales webinar. Relax. Take it easy. Many times a salesperson or a speaker, somebody might say, the last thing on my agenda is to sell you something. Well, listen to those words again. The last thing on my agenda is to sell you something. That means I have an agenda, and the last thing on it is to sell you something. Selling you something today is not on my agenda. What I would like to do is attract you to one day come to one of my live events. That's why I'm broadcasting this out all over the world. I think we've got like 28 countries on here, and I travel all the time, and I'm hoping that maybe one of the distinctions I share with you inspires you to come and want to explore the journey with me more and come to a live event. For example, this week, I am in Europe. I'm going to be all over Denmark. I'm going to be in Sweden. I'm going to be in Finland. I'm going to be in Estonia. I'm going to be traveling all over the place. And if you go to my Facebook page, you'll see the various links that you can click on and go and find out if I'm doing an event near you. For those of you who are not here in Scandinavia or Northern Europe, no problem. I'm traveling all the time. I'm in London. I'm often in Africa. I travel. I'm doing some stuff in North America this year. So no matter where you're from, I want to connect with you one day. That's the purpose of this webinar, is to get you to come and see me live one day so we can shake hands and get to know each other. So that said, here's the tool. Again, let's think about this. This is for anyone who is currently in their own business all by themselves, or whether you have 100 or more employees. I've done it in both environments, and this tool is one of the most powerful things I can share with you. I really want you to get this. Most companies eventually go through the exercise of building themselves organizational charts. I think they're fun. I do. It's a neat exercise to go through. And then, once you've collected your organizational chart, you put it all together and you've got boxes and lines and little descriptions, you can put it on the wall. And if your business has any more than about 5 or 6 employees, your organizational chart will be out of date within a week. It's very fast. And so one day you kind of have to go through the process of redoing your organizational chart. Now, I think organizational charts are a good idea. They're fun, and they help to clarify your thinking about your business a little bit, and maybe they clarify some items around communications and reporting and delegation structures and so on. And for the most part, I think they're just mental bubblegum. I don't know that they're that useful. I want to teach you a better way, a way that I use all the time, and my clients love it, and my businesses have worked very well with this. And this is a system that we call role mapping. It is a form of organizational chart that is not based on the traditional format. So let's think about the traditional format. You create an organizational chart, and yeah, here's a great advantage to come to see me live do this one day, is I'll actually show them to you live, like on a board. Now I'll describe it to you. A normal organizational chart has, say, the president, owner, managing director, CEO in the top box, and then that comes down to a marketing director, finance person, operations manager, IT manager, and then those people have people under them that are reporting to them and communication chains and so on. And sometimes, you know, they really do help you to figure out who talks to whom and who can delegate to whom and so on. A role map is done very differently. And I created my very first role map when I started my very first company in England in 1997. And my role map worked like this. I said, what will my company look like in 3 or 4 years? And that's how I want to build my role map. So there was a managing director of the company. I created a box and left it blank. I then drew the lines across, and I said, well, I'll need a finance person, a finance director, and or CFO if you're coming from North America. And I'll need some kind of operations director, and I'll need a sales and marketing person, or a sales director and a marketing director. And I kind of created this whole role map around the roles, no names, just the roles that existed in the business. The next step is to then populate the boxes with the name or names of the people that do those roles. So in my case, this is for all of you who are in the one or two people in your company camp. I went through and I put my names in. Well, you tell me, who was the managing director of my company? Me. And so I put my name in the box. And at first that felt really good. I'm the managing director. This was my first business, remember. I was very excited. I even had business cards that said managing director and everything. So then what I did is I looked at, okay, well, who's going to be the marketing director? Well, that'll be me. Who's going to be the sales director? That'll be me. And who's going to be the operations manager? That'll be me. And who's going to be the warehouse manager who's doing the shipping and receiving? That'll be me. And of course, what happens is as you continue to populate that box, you find your name is in a whole lot of boxes. Now, if any of you right now are dealing with a level of stress in your life that you'd rather not be dealing with relative to your business, there is a possibility for you right now to feel a measurable reduction in your stress, like a measurable reduction right now. This is what you do. You do step one, create the role map of the way you want your business to be. Because here's the thing, that may be the way you want your business to be, and even if you have one or two people, that is how your business is today. It has a manager owner. It has a finance person. It has an operations person. It has an IT manager. It has a marketing manager. And if you're only one person, you are in all those roles. Whether you want to design a role map or an organizational chart or not, that's how it is. So do the exercise with a little trust, because here's step two. When you've put all your names in as step two, you're ready for step three. And that is that you take a red marker and you circle your name, or you circle the box, each box where your name is in and you really don't want it to be. So for example, one of the first boxes I circled was warehouse manager. I didn't want to be shipping and receiving products. Of course, it's a valuable thing that has to get done. I have two problems with it. One, I got to go meet with customers, suppliers, and bankers, and I got to be dressed the part and what have you. And so it doesn't really suit me to have to jump into the warehouse and suddenly ship a bunch of stuff. And on top of that, I'm sorry, but from a brass tacks perspective, the cost of a warehouse person relative to what I was worth to the business as a manager or even as a salesperson did not make sense for me to be shipping and receiving stuff. So red. And then I looked at accounting. I'm like, I don't want to be doing accounting and bookkeeping. Red. And really, I don't want to be the only salesperson in the company, so I circle a bunch of those, say those have to be replaced. That's the red one. Then you take out the yellow one. The yellow marker, you circle all the other jobs where, you know, I'd like to stop doing that. I'm happy for now, but, you know, in the future I'd like to pull out of those boxes. You circle those ones in yellow. And then lastly, you take out the green, and you underline all the jobs that you're happy to do for the next 2 or 3 years. So for me, that was sales director, managing director, and finance director. I was happy to watch those things for the next 2 or 3 years. All the other stuff, I wanted to know that I was getting other people to do them eventually. I was going to recruit in the right employees, the right partners, whatever it took to get people, to get me to the place where I was only in the green boxes. Now, here's what's fascinating. If you do this, and I know it's so easy, some of you, I bet you there are some of you right now that are flicking over and looking. Stop for a minute. Do you want your business life to change? Do you want it to become easier? Do you want to have full-on business freedom where your business does not require you to be there in order for it to produce revenue, in order for it to grow, in order for it to create equity so that one day you might even be able to sell it if you wanted to? If you really want those things, if you want to be able to create more time for yourself, more enjoyment of life, more time for your family, more financial abundance so that you can do what you want to do when you have this time, send your children to the best education you can, eat whatever you know, go on vacations where you want it. If you want all that, then leave Facebook alone and just pay attention for a second. Don't listen passively. Create a role map. Show all the roles that you want in your business now and in the future. Put the names of the people that are doing those roles in those boxes. Highlight the urgent challenges in red, the next ones in yellow, and the ones you're happy with in green. And I'll tell you, if you do this, you will immediately feel a mild reduction in your stress, because your mind will recognize that you have a plan for reducing some of the unbelievable workload that you have for yourself in your business right now. Please do this exercise. And by the way, now some of you are going, yeah, but I have like 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 people. I saw one person that I happen to know logged in has over 180 employees. So you're thinking, well, wait a second now, how's that really going to work for me? Well, you know what? As an initial exercise, let me give you an example. I bought a company, and I was told that there were a few people in that company that if they ever left, I would completely lose the business. In other words, I should never have bought the company. Don't ever buy a company that's so unbelievably dependent on one or two people that your entire investment is at risk. That's one of the mistakes I made. So in the meantime, here I own this company, and now I'm told that if this person ever left the finance department, you will lose the business. Because what she knows is so custom and so specific, you're in really serious trouble if she goes. And then there was another person who was working in operations effectively and managing all the projects and ultimately every aspect of delivering to clients, making stuff happen for clients. And I was told if he left, I mean, look, if the accounts woman left, you're going to lose the business. You might pull through. If this guy leaves, you're toast. It's over. And so we created role maps. And when we created those role maps, we realized that what we needed to do to create independence in that finance area was simply document procedures and create reports that would make it possible for us to replace that person if we ever needed to. And I will tell you that shortly after that, we did lose her. Shortly after that, we ended up having to replace her. And shortly after that, we replaced her and massively improved the way we ran our accounts. Our cash flow improved. In fact, the business shortly after that went through its most successful phase in history. We were told we'd lose the business if she left. Then we moved on to the tougher one. Now the tougher one, unfortunately, same thing happened here, is that this guy, he's a great guy, I loved working with him, and then he had a family and a health issue, and it was like kind of time to move on, and he had to move across the country. And all of a sudden we're like, oh my God, we were told if he left, we're in deep trouble. Well, hang on. We've done the role map. And we know now why they're telling us that if he leaves, we're in deep trouble. And that's because his name was in all kinds of boxes. I mean, every role you could imagine he was involved with. And you can imagine how difficult it would be, first of all, to find somebody who's willing to take on a job with that kind of stress load. How challenging would that be? And then also, imagine trying to find somebody who has all those skills that he's developed over the 15 years he'd been working in the business. Impossible. And so before he left, we circled in red all the areas that we needed to make sure were being properly taken care of. And so that when we did finally replace him, we replaced him with an unbelievably competent, amazing woman, one of the people I've been most honored to work with in my life, and she was able to slide right in and move and get that business rolling, and she played a huge role in why the business then went into its most successful phase in its history. So this system works whether you have no people, just you, or whether you have a growing business or already large business. This is an unbelievably powerful. I know it sounds so simple. I'm asking you to do it. Take out a paper, roughly one box for every role that's in the business, in the departments, looking a lot like an organizational chart. Put the names in all the boxes. Now, once you've done that, here's how you know that you have challenge areas or squeeze points. One is when someone is in a box doing a job that they dislike. If anyone is doing a job they dislike, they really shouldn't be in that box. If you're doing jobs right now that you dislike, you really shouldn't be doing those jobs. Now today maybe you have to, and that's fine. Look, one thing that's very true of entrepreneurship, and this is one of the reasons we get in this trap, so listen to this and then what comes after. Entrepreneurship is about working harder and doing things that other people are just simply not prepared to do for a period of 2 or 3 years so that you can live a lifestyle that other people only ever dream of. That is very true of entrepreneurship. The challenge is that what then happens to us is that we get caught on that treadmill of, well, entrepreneurship is about working harder than everyone else so we can live the lifestyle that other people dream of. And the next thing you know, many entrepreneurs end up living a lifestyle that's quite simply a nightmare. Not a dream at all. So when you look at your role map and you see these different names in there, when you see a squeeze point, so one squeeze point is someone's name is in a box doing a job they dislike. Not good. Someone is doing a job that they don't do all that well. Not good. One box has more than 2 names in it. Not good. Or one person's name is in a ton of boxes. Not good. This little lesson can absolutely help you chart the course of the growth of your company as you're starting up if you're in that phase, or can completely correct the course of your business no matter what size it is today. It's so powerful. It's really, I'd love for you to do this, especially for those of you who are in Northern Europe. Like if I'm going to see you in Copenhagen or in, where else I'm in, I'm going to try and pronounce this. You guys can all laugh at me around the world. I'm going to Aarhus. I don't know if I pronounced it right, but I'm going to be in Denmark, of course, in a couple of days, and a number of other places here in Northern Europe. So if you're going to be here, bring your role map. I'd love to see it, and I'll give you my feedback on it. I absolutely will. And I want to, at this point, we've had a couple questions come up about role maps. So Jackie, do you want to jump in here at this stage?
Yep, we do have one question that just came in, and it is...
Hello, Jackie?
Can you hear me okay?
Hang on, I'm having a little sound issue. I'm going to fix it. There we go, Jackie, are you back? Okay, I've actually totally lost Jackie, but luckily I can read one of the questions here. So the question is, okay, fine, I got to leave all these roles. How do I get comfortable with it? All right, how you get comfortable with it is really quite it's interesting. So there are two reasons that we don't give up roles. One is very obvious, and the other one is more subtle. The more obvious one is that we don't give it up because we want to make sure it gets done properly. You know, here's a funny thing about entrepreneurs. I don't know if you can relate to this. It seems to be pretty consistent for me. Entrepreneurs are pretty smart. And we often think we're smarter than other people. Now, I'm not arguing whether that's true or not, but we certainly feel like that at times. And so when we want to delegate a role to somebody, it's like, well, I know that I can do this better than the person I'm delegating it to. And so why would I delegate it to them? I want to make sure it gets done properly. So that's one of the things that holds us back. I was recently doing a seminar here in Europe about 4 or 5 weeks ago, or no, maybe 2 months ago now, I think. And one of the women said to me, I just can't delegate this out. I just can't give this. She didn't want to have someone else touching her account. She just didn't trust anyone else to do that. And I said to her, okay, I get that. I said, do you like doing it? She goes, no. I said, why do you do it? Well, she says, because I want it done properly. It's got to be done right. The invoices have to be done properly. The bills have to be entered correctly. It just has to be done properly. And I just have to do it. And I said, well, does it create stress for you that you're doing it? She goes, yes, I don't like doing it, and I need to be doing other things, so I don't really have time. So often I find myself doing it at like late at night and when I could be with my kids, and you know, so no, I don't want to have to do it, but I do have to, and that's that. And I said, all right, here's one question I have for you. And so now I asked her this question, and I'm asking it of you. Think of a role that right now you think of giving up that role as being challenging or difficult. And here's the question I asked her. I'd like you to imagine that you had a report. And that report contained all the key information from that role. So in this case, it was accounts. So it told you how much money you had in the bank. It told you how much money you owed for the next several months. It told you how much money was owing to you for the next several months. It gave you a cash flow forecast and a snapshot of your balance sheet. So you're able to fully see your current cash flow, your current cash position, and your projected cash position. And it gave you a report to show you where all the invoicing was, and basically how your department looked. I said, if you got a report like that, say once a week, would you feel okay with giving up the role? And she goes, well, yeah, of course I would. I said, so why not create that report? And it was like a light bulb went off for her. It's like, well, of course I should create that report. And so one of the things that you can do when you want to delegate out a role is you get a sense of what are the key performance indicators, the KPIs for that role, and put them in a report. And when you delegate it to that person, you go, I want you to fill in all these blanks. Don't make them create the report. You create the template. Here's what the report looks like. Just fill in this information for me and give it to me every Friday. Now, I did this in my first business, and that meant that every department head, as I hired them, as I trained them and got them doing their job, they had a report they had to give me. And every Friday, I'd collect up the reports. And that meant that I could sit on a Saturday morning and just flip through reports. And of course, once I saw those reports, I was able instantly to see where potential challenges were happening. I was also able to instantly feel calm and relaxed because, frankly, most of the time, there weren't significant challenges. So that's a really key way that you can begin to feel better about making that happen. So, okay, Jackie, I think you're back online. Do we have our next question?
Yes. So when it comes to hiring people for role maps, how do you hire the right people?
Yeah, that's obviously a really good question. And the first thing you do is you do not necessarily hire people that you immediately like. Let me back up. I don't mean you hire people you dislike. What I mean is that you begin to recognize that there are all kinds of different personality types. I don't have time tonight to talk to you about in detail about all 8 of the kind of entrepreneurial paths that exist for people. What I want you to understand is that there are some people, for example, who really like numbers, and there are some people who really like people, and there are some people who really like, negotiating. Everybody has these different sort of inclinations and proclivities. There are things they like to do and things they don't like to do. Now, the other thing that's quirky about people is that we seem to pretty much like people like us. I think it's a strange form of self-love. We meet somebody, we resonate with them, they're a lot like us, and we like them. Well, here's the problem. Imagine you have a job interview. You want to recruit somebody to come in and handle your accounts. And you have a conversation with them. And the conversation goes like this. Well, I want to thank you for coming in for the interview today. This is what our company does for a living. We were founded in this year, and I'm the owner, and we do this, 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 and this. And then the person goes, oh, well, that's really interesting. I went to accounting school, and I've worked with companies just like yours, and I am interested in doing this, this, and this. And you go, we're so similar. I think we should work together. Well, here's the challenge. If you are so similar in the interview, or if you are so similar in your resonance with each other, you are likely hiring another person with a similar energy to you. In other words, you're going to hire another you, which means now you're both going to want to do the same types of jobs and have the same skill sets. And so what we have to do is break our addiction to the desire to have people that are similar to us, or the desire to have people around us that we feel naturally comfortable with. And sometimes we have to go out and hire people that we actually feel somewhat uncomfortable with. Let me give you an example that I think will be more tangible for many of you. You see, because many times people who regard themselves as entrepreneurial are quite often creative. Now, that won't be the case with all of you. It will be the case with a large percentage of you. And here's how you know that you're the creative, quite aside from the fact that you might doodle or draw or be creative or like to tell stories. I'm talking at a very core level. Here's one of the ways you can tell. If you really rather prefer starting things than finishing them, then you might be a creative. And some of you are giggling to yourself right now, and some of you aren't going to let that happen. And you know that you like to start stuff, and then sometimes finishing it is not really your favorite thing. So let's imagine that that's who you are, whether it is or isn't, and then you go to have an interview. Well, also if you're creative, sometimes if you're creative, you can have kind of high energy. It's like, yes, well, let's start the interview. So now we do a new interview. Hey, I want to thank you for coming in for the interview. Let me tell you a bit about our company. We started it back here. We've got this going on. We've had this and this, and we're inventing all kinds of great stuff, and it's going to be fantastic and amazing, and we're going to take over the world. Now the person in the interview says, oh, that's just the kind of company I've been wanting to work for. I've done this and this, and I think it's amazing, and I'm really excited, and I really hope you'll give me the job because I'd love to help you take over the world. Well, you see, right now, that just feels like the best interview in the world. There's rapport, there's just like connection. We got to hire this person right now. And then pretty soon, you got two people who like to start stuff, and nobody wants to finish it. And so when we're hiring the right people, one of the key things that we need to do is make sure that we're hiring people that we're not immediately comfortable with, that we are hiring people that love what they do. Let me give you another distinction on this. Many of you will be familiar with the concept of law of attraction. I'm not going to have a huge metaphysical conversation about law of attraction right now. What I'm going to talk about is the simple, basic truth of attraction. All right? Now let's think about this. If you walk into a company that has 10 employees, most of whom are doing jobs they do not particularly like. Look, they have jobs, they're grateful for their employment. They don't really love their job, though. If you walk into that company, and then later that afternoon you walk into another company that also has 10 employees, the other competitor, let's say, they're in the exact same business, and now this other place has 10 employees, and every single one of those employees absolutely has passion for what they're doing. They love it. And by the way, are there people who absolutely love numbers? There are people. I think they're a little sick. I'm kidding, of course. I can't stand that. Spreadsheets and QuickBooks and numbers and all this stuff, right? There are people who love that stuff. Well, don't you think you should hire somebody who absolutely loves that stuff? Of course. And so in the second company where everybody loves each of their roles, now my question is, having walked into a company with a bunch of employees who, they're grateful for their job, but they don't love their job. And then you walk into another company where they all absolutely love their job. Which company is at its core more attractive? In other words, which company are people going to do business with more easily? Which company is going to attract inward investment more easily? The one where people are in flow and loving what they do. So the core truth of attraction is the bigger percentage of your time that you and your teammates are spending doing stuff they love, the more attraction you'll create for your business. So those are a couple of key things about hiring people. And I know, Jackie, you've got another one for me. I'm just going to go, I know this is not a short answer. I'm going to give one more distinction on interviewing. And this is particularly around salespeople, because quite often people have a hard time hiring good quality salespeople. In fact, some of you either have or have watched people hire very nice, competent salespeople and then lose money on them for the next 6 months before they finally have to let them go. I've done it. I've done it. And I will not do it again. This is how you hire salespeople. You bring the salesperson in for the interview. you have an interview with them. And I have a longer process that I can discuss about this, and if you ever come and see me live, I'll go through the whole thing probably. I want to give you the final piece that's so important. Having interviewed them, having gotten a little bit of a relationship going with them, with you having a conversation, you now tell them, hey, I've really enjoyed this interview. It's just our company is all about total superstars, people who just have a little bit of a competitive edge and just total superstars. And right now from our interview, while I like you, I'm not feeling that total superstar thing from you. Well, now what might happen? You're going to get one of three reactions. One is, oh, all right then. Well, thank God you've just interviewed a nice, perfectly competent salesperson that would have been happy to suck money out of your company for 6 months and then one day have to go because they weren't hitting their targets and you needed to make room for someone else. That's option one. Option two, they have a meltdown. What do you mean I'm not that person? And they could freak out. Well, that's something you're really glad you learned today rather than once you've already hired them. What you're looking for is right in the middle where somebody says, well, I'm curious as to why you think that, because I got to tell you something. I've been a superstar at every sales job I've ever had. I'm highly competitive, and I'm absolutely sure I can get the result for you. At which point you don't say, well then, you're hired. You go, yeah, you can say that, but I'm just not feeling it. Again, with rejection. Now, this may sound a little unkind, but it's one of the kindest things you could do for you and for them. Because let me ask you something. If they can't overcome a couple of soft, nicely worded rejections like that right now, how are they going to overcome objections when they're selling you, your company, your products or services? If they can't handle a little rejection right now, if they can't sell themselves, how are they going to sell you? So when you're interviewing people, and by the way, this works in every role. It's not just in sales. You're hiring somebody to do your warehouse. Hey, you know what? I'd love to have you come here and work in the warehouse and handling our shipping and receiving. I got to tell you, though, we are all about total commitment to quality and on-time shipment. And I mean, I like our interview here. I'm not getting that that's really important to you. Oh no, that's totally important to me. You see what I'm saying? You got to reject them on exactly the features that you're looking for in your business. Now, I want to offer a little disclaimer because I know that I have a very large number of people from Northern Europe on this call. And I know that culture is different in every single country. And for the rest of you who don't know, I'll explain what's going on here. You try and reject people like this in Norway or Sweden, maybe Denmark, you say that to them, they will quietly, with confidence, say to themselves, well, you have no idea what you just missed out on, and walk out of the interview. And so you need to be a little gentle, and frankly, there are circumstances around the rest of the world where that might happen. And so what you can do if you suspect that's the case is you can soften the rejection a little bit. You can say, hey, look, I've really enjoyed our interview. It's been really great. The challenge is our company is all about like superstar salespeople and competitive atmosphere. We really want people who are really hungry for it. And I'm just not really picking that up from you right now. What do you think of that? And simply by opening the door to them, just giving them that little opening, you'll find that at that point that'll give them permission to sell themselves in. Many times countries like here in Northern Europe where they've got Juntala, or you go to Australia with tall poppy syndrome, and you go to England with the all right for some syndrome, then sometimes if you reject people too hard, they'll just kind of, whatever, they won't be willing to sell themselves. And so you need to create for them sometimes just a little window that lets them sell themselves. So that's some of my total nuggets on, first of all, how do you make sure you're getting the right people, and then how do you interview them properly so that you definitely have the right people. What's next, Jackie?
So this question is from Lauren, and she wants to know if you have any advice for filling in some red spots when you're a new startup. It's kind of a two-part question. So one, is it better to hire sooner for the stuff that you're not good at and or dislike, or to just muddle through it until you can afford to hire someone? And two is, what strategies do you have to help infuse cash for a new startup?
Wow, okay, so that's a whole lot of stuff. So there's a couple things. First, let's take a step back. What happens to most people is as they start moving into that phase where they want to hire people, they don't. They don't because they're busy. They don't because they don't have the cash flow yet, or they have any number of reasons that they don't. And then one day they suddenly have to. It's like, oh my God, I need somebody. I'm so stressed out. Only problem at this point is they no longer have time. They're too busy to train somebody. I'm sure many of you have either done this yourselves or you've seen it done. I've done it and I've seen it done. You suddenly go, well, why don't you get yourself an assistant? Oh, God, I don't have time to train an assistant. Okay, that's a little weird, isn't it? And so before we even get to answering these questions, one of the things that you can do, and I really recommend this is so easy to do, is whenever you are doing a job in your company, so you're in a box in your role map, And let's imagine for a minute that you're raising an invoice. All right, you're raising an invoice. Write down each step of the process the first time you do it or the second or third time you do it. Write down the steps. You go, oh, raising an invoice. Well, first, I log into QuickBooks. Secondly, I open the company file. Thirdly, I go to the record for the company that I'd like to raise the invoice. Fourthly, I click Raise an Invoice. Fifth, I use this template. Sixth, I enter in a description of the products, and this is the way we typically describe our products. Then I put in the pricing, and you describe that whole process right down to I stuff the envelope and I send it out, or I PDF it and I email it out. And you write that whole process out. Every job you're doing as a solopreneur, you write these things out and you keep them in a binder or a folder. So now, when you start getting to that place where you really need to hire somebody, you can go, God, I am so busy, I really don't have time to train you, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to raise an invoice. I want you to hold this piece of paper in your hand and read out the steps to me as if you're teaching me how to raise an invoice. And then they tell you, open QuickBooks, open the company file, log into the client record, open the invoice. And because when they, in the act of teaching you to do it step by step, they will learn it hyper quickly, and they have a document that will then teach them how to do it. Your training time has been cut by 90% at this point. And if you've created some basic reports you want, you can now ask them to say, could you please let me know how many invoices you issue each day, and make sure I see a copy of them. And so you can begin immediately to have some calm about delegating out that role. So now let's get to the more brass, tacks of the question is, hey, how do I do this? I'm in startup mode, I've got cash flow issues and all this kind of stuff. Well, there's a couple of answers. The one is, be okay with part-time work. Quite often, bringing people in for part-time is the answer, and it's a great answer. So be willing to accept part-time work, and also be willing to train people. There's often people out there that are looking for work experience. I mean, some of the very best people you'll hire come from two areas where earning a great deal of money from their job isn't highly important to them, and that's at the beginning of the job cycle, where they're trying to get work experience, and at the end of the job cycle, when people quite often just want to get back out and stay active. And often they bring a world of wisdom with them, which we often discredit. It's a really fascinating thing that we see people that are, sort of past middle age, and we think, oh, well, no, I'm telling you, some of the greatest brilliance you'll get will be from those people, and they're both often at different ends of the income, or they're both at sort of at points where they might be willing to come in and work at a level that isn't going to immediately drain from your cash flow so dramatically. Also, does it say what country Lauren is in by chance, Jackie? No? Okay, so that's fine. Also, many countries, particularly when they've got a slightly more socialist or slightly more liberal leaning, they will often have employment creation plans. So, for example, in Norway, you can actually get often employees that are initially funded or partially funded by the government. And so you want to look into that. I found stuff like that in England. We had employees that were placed with us to get work experience, and then we had the option of keeping them after they worked out really well. So that's another strategy for making that happen. And then the other thing is this: partners. You can always, in startup mode, take a look at where you really plan to go with your business and recognize that if you've got a big dream and you really want to go somewhere, sometimes it's smarter to have a smaller piece of a very, very big pie than to hold on and have 100% of a very small pie. And so sometimes for key roles that might be really challenging to hire from, bringing partners in might be a good idea. And of course, you can always use some combination. I, at one point, wanted to grow one of my businesses in England. We had a business that was doing barcode systems, warehouse management, wireless networking, that kind of stuff. And I really, really, really wanted to start a repair facility. In fact, my previous employer, it was one of the reasons I left that job. It's like I was always pushing for this concept. We should do this, we should do this, we should do this. And he was just not interested in doing that. And so I really wanted to do it once I had my own business. And so the challenge was I didn't know a lot about field service or repair or maintenance or any of that kind of stuff. And one day I tracked somebody down who came in to repair some stuff for us and loved working with him. Great guy. And so we wanted to bring him into the business. And salary-wise, he's going to be outside of our price range. So what did we do? Started off part-time, started off job by job. And then as he worked with us and we were able to turn that into capital because he's doing work for us, which we're, of course, making money from, we increased our commitment to him, he increased our commitment to us, and at the point in time that I decided I wanted to bring him in full-time to the business, I offered him a level of partnership, some equity in the business. And of course he accepted that, and when I sold the business, it gave him a big chunk of cash. And so those are some of the strategies that you could use to fill some of those boxes. Did I answer all that question, Jackie? Hey, Jackie, I can't read those, so you're going to have to answer verbally.
Yeah, I think that you're great.
Okay, great. Next question, please.
Um, Let me check the Facebook and get right back to you.
All right, so I want to touch a little bit more on that, on the issue of cash flow with that in mind. The issue of cash flow is very significant in business. I mean, look, no money, no business. And is it possible to have a business that's really, really profitable and has no cash? Absolutely, completely. I had the really great privilege of touring around the world with Tony Robbins at his Business Mastery Seminar. And as great a privilege as it was to work with Tony, one of the additional privileges was also working with Keith Cunningham. And Keith Cunningham, I mean, there's a lot of different things I could quote him on. One of my favorite ones is he just found a way of expressing something that I've thought for a long time, and that is profit is a theory. Profit is a theory. It's entirely possible to have a month where you go, wow, we've made all this profit, and we have no cash. And so I want to touch on two aspects of cash flow relative to this. One is that you really have to have good cash management. This is an extremely important thing, and earlier on in your business you do this, the better. The fact is this: most accountants, and I'm really sorry if you're an accountant, and I hope this isn't true for you. If it is, take this as some feedback of what entrepreneurs really want from you. And that is that most accountants are really bean counters. They're there to help you count the money, or they're there to help you report on the money so that you can pay the correct level of taxes. And these days, what you really want from a really great accountant or great CFO in your business is somebody who handles cash strategy, somebody who can actually help you release the cash that's in your business. You know, you take a company, for example, and this is a little complex. Just stick with me on this. I want you to imagine that you have a company that, because they like to pay their bills on time, they're always paying their bills pretty much as soon as they come in. They don't even wait for the due date. I've been surprised how many of my clients have done this. The bills come in, we have the money, we may as well just pay it. And so they pay it. In the meantime, many of their suppliers are paying late. Well, they're okay. They're squeaking through. Sure, they have the occasional cash flow problem, but generally speaking, they make it work. When they have a cash flow problem, they pay the bills a little bit later, but still mostly on time. Now, here's what's really fascinating. If you can teach that customer, in my case as a consultant, if I can teach that customer to only pay their bills on time, if that business is around about $1 million a year in revenue, that can literally take their cash flow up by somewhere between $30,000 and $80,000, sorry, $30,000 and $50,000 a month, depending on the type of business they're in. And here's why. Because when they're paying their bills early and everyone else is paying them late, the cash is going out the door and not coming back in the door. Now, this isn't to say that they have that extra money. Please hear me. They don't have the extra money. It's still going to go out the door. It's still spoken for. It's just that it's in their possession for longer. And there are two major, there are others, but for right now, there are two major reasons why you want to make this happen. One is it's always good to have cash on hand. You never know what's coming around the next corner. In fact, we're going to talk about business icebergs for a minute, and I really want you to get this. It's always good to have the cash on hand. You don't know what's coming around the next corner. The other reason is that your bank is evaluating the quality of you as a client based on your daily deposit level. So if you are constantly paying your bills early or on time, or right on time or early, and people are always paying you late, and that's leaving you with a smaller cash balance, then the bank looks at you as one kind of client. Whereas if you start paying your bills like on time, or on time, a little bit beyond on time, like everyone else is paying you, then all of a sudden you create this cash flow bump, which is not actual cash in your pocket to spend, but it's actual cash in your bank for emergencies and for good appearance with the bank. So now the bank looks at you and goes, wow, they have an average daily deposit of $30,000 or pounds or kroner or whatever the case may be, and they like that a lot better. So when you want to go to them for a line of credit or a loan, they're much more willing to get behind you. So this is important. Now, that's all fine and good, but what about increasing your revenues? Would that be interesting? All right, well, let's talk about that. Now, many of you, I know, have been to webinars of mine before where I talk in detail about inception marketing, and I'm not going to do that today. I just want to talk briefly about it. I want to talk about the reality that our current form of marketing for most businesses is not as effective as it was in the past, and certainly not as effective as it could be. And that's because, frankly, people are distracted. Remember how I started this webinar? You guys have so many choices with what to do with your time. So many choices with what to do with your time. Well, so do your clients. They are not seeing the ads anymore. They're not seeing all the offers. When they're watching TV, when they're reading a newspaper online or offline, when they're listening to the radio, when they're driving down the street, the billboards, the ads, they're all kind of disappearing off into a fog. And so one of the things that you want to take a look at is recognizing that it's time to get really strategic about your marketing. And so in order to do that, here's a big shift I want you to consider, is that your marketing now needs to be about your clients way more than it's about you. Most people designing a brochure, a sales letter, a landing page for their website are constantly thinking about, what can I say about me? What can I say about me? Well, let me tell you right now, those of you who are women on this call, I'd like for you to give this some thought. You go on a date. Maybe you were single at one stage. Maybe you're single right now. You go on a date, and the man that you're with spends the entire date only talking about themselves. How well is that going to go? Right? Men, how about you? Same thing, right? Spends the whole time only talking about herself. You're not interested. Well, the reality is these days, really effective marketing talks about the consumer. And so I'm going to give you one example that comes out of inception marketing, and frankly, it's something I really was heavily influenced by a good friend of mine, Chet Holmes, on. And he developed this metaphor called the stadium pitch. And we call it in inception marketing an engagement pitch, because it's a pitch that's designed to bring people into your funnel, to create engagement with them. And so one of my very favorite examples of this is a friend of mine comes to me one day and he says, Eric, I've got a bit of a competitive challenge. I run a wedding photography business. I run this wedding photography business in the Caribbean, and it's gorgeous, and people come down and get married, and it's a fantastic business. And I've been here for years and years running this business, and I've got a great building, and I've got great people, and it's a great business. And one of the problems I have is a few people have landed on the island recently, recognize how gorgeous the island is, and they've decided that since they own a camera, they should be a wedding photographer. This is causing some problems because, of course, what they do is they set up a website. It looks very much like his website, and when people call for pricing, who do you think's cheaper? The one with one camera or the one running a proper, full-on photography and videography studio? Well, obviously. And the challenge is that, you know, in the real world, outside of something like wedding photography, look, if you lose a deal to a competitor one time, if the competitor doesn't deliver very well, no problem. They'll come back to you. That doesn't usually work with wedding photography. if they go to your competitor and they don't take service, they're not coming back to you because they've already had their wedding. And even if they have another wedding, I'd like you to imagine the conversation between a husband and wife that goes like this. Or sorry, I should say a bride and groom. Now it's the groom's second marriage, right? He got the wrong wedding photographer the first time. That might be why his marriage didn't last. And now he's having a conversation with his new bride to be, and he says, you know, I've been thinking about where we should get married, and you know, I got married in the Turks and Caicos last time. Let's do that again. I don't think so. Something tells me she's not going to be okay with that. So what I'm kind of getting at is that my friend could not rely on the idea that once people went to the competitors, they'd come back to him, because once they went to the competitors, it was over. So what we had to do is get strategic about talking to the consumer long before they made their buying decision. And so I said to him, well, what's going on here? Like, at what stage do they typically get the wedding photography book? And he goes, well, it's not super early. It's about midway toward the end. You know, they've booked the resort. They know they're coming to Turks and Caicos. I said, well, when do they pick the resort? He says, well, usually the bride picks the resort at some time in the month before she picks the groom. Yeah, I guess it's a little wedding humor. The truth, though, is that they do pick the resort usually before they pick the photographer. I mean, I guess you kind of need to know where you're getting married before you hire the photographer. And so in his case, what I asked him to do is I said, well, let's think about that. Why don't we try to advertise to them when they're shopping for the resort instead of waiting until they're looking for the photographer? And he goes, Eric, that's a great idea. I already tried it. We placed ads, Google AdWords, and what have you, and it just didn't work. And I said, wait a second. What did the ad say? And he said, well, you know, world-class wedding photography, sunset wedding pictures, you know, the normal, typical stuff that a photographer would say in their ads. And I said, well, here's the problem. You're talking about you. You're talking about you. You need to talk about them. I said, by the way, most cases, who are you hearing from, the bride or the groom or somebody else in the wedding party? He says, oh, it's really quite often the bride. And I said, all right, let's think this through. She's shopping for the wedding resort. What's on her mind? Her wedding. What's most important to her? Well, this is really simple, guys. All over the world I've asked this question, and it's really funny. Audiences really have a good time with this. Here's the question. Women, how old were you the first time you contemplated or visualized or fantasized about getting married? And here, now I think about that for a minute. If you're a woman, think it through. When did you really first kind of visualize it? The wedding gown, the walking down the aisle, your father handing you off? You see, here are the answers I get from around the world. They start at 4, and they usually are around 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, and occasionally when I'm in Norway, they say 26. But the reality is really young. Then I say, men, how old were you when you first thought about getting married? This is usually met with laughter, and then some men will say, 27. And I go, and when did you get married? 27. It's a different psychology, and this is one of the key things we have to remember about marketing, is that different groups of prospects have different psychological profiles or different values. And so our marketing has to take that into account. We can't be all things to all people. And so if we're trying to attract the brides to come to learn about our wedding photography, we want to talk to her about what's important to her. And what's important to her, since she's been thinking about this since she was 5 years old, is that it is the perfect day. And so rather than putting up an ad, there they are looking for resorts. You could buy the Google AdWords, wedding resorts, Turks and Caicos, and then you put up your Google AdWord, wedding photography. Not interested right now. That's not what she's thinking about. She'll be thinking about that in a few weeks. What if instead the ad said, brides, there are 7 mistakes that might ruin your wedding day. I'm going to teach you how to avoid them. Click, 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 click. They're engaged. They're in. They're coming to learn more. And in learning more, we're going to teach them some fabulous things. And in teaching them those fabulous things, some of those things are going to be about how to make sure they get the right photographer. Now, this is a very nutshell version of what we teach around marketing, inception marketing. I just wanted to give you that because I want to tell you right now, consider just this. If you suddenly find a way to increase your number of prospects by 10%, and then you were able to figure out a way to increase your closing average by 10%, and then as a result of having all this new business coming in the door, you were able to increase your prices by 10%, how much growth does that create for your business? 10%? No, 33%. What if you took it 20-20-20? You see, and then I say that to people and they often go, well, yeah, but that's a lot of growth. I don't know how it, well, let's go back for a minute. How many people click the ad when you say world-class wedding photography when that's not what they're thinking about? And by the time they are thinking about it, they're comparing you to all the other photographers and finding out that they're a whole lot cheaper because, well, and they don't know the because. They don't know it's because they're a one-man band. When you run this new engagement pitch or stadium pitch, as Chet Holmes would have called it, when you run it there, you get click, 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 click. They're coming into the funnel, and now you have the opportunity to educate them on how to avoid buying photography from a one-man band that might ruin their pictures. And so as a consequence, you have a significant higher lead flow, a much higher conversion level, and you don't need to be so price competitive. If you can't make a 33% growth rate out of that, you might be in the wrong business. And so revenue does not have to be the overarching challenge of business anymore. In fact, most of the times when I'm focusing on helping clients, whether it's at one of my seminars or whether I'm working with you one-on-one as a consultant, most of the time what I'm trying to do is help prepare you for massive sales growth, because the sales growth isn't the most difficult part of it. It's handling the growth. It's being ready for it. It's having the systems and procedures in place so that you can take in that growth without drowning in it. So, Jackie, do we have any follow-up questions at this point?
Yes, we had one that was interested in learning more about your preview tour and what they can expect from one of those sessions.
Okay, so I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to step out of the frame for a minute, enjoy this map of Oslo, and I'll be right back, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop up a link to my Facebook page so that you can see all my upcoming dates through Northern Europe, and so that if you want to come see me live in some other city around the world at some point, then you know that if you like that page, you're going to find out about those dates. So I'm going to put that page up, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and I got a couple other distinctions you want from that. So hold on one second. There, I think if I've done this properly, I've redirected or opened a window for the participants that takes you to my Facebook page. If it didn't work, it's really easy to find me. My name is relatively unique on Facebook. Punch it in, find me on Facebook, and you'll find a record of all the dates. Some of the cities that I'm going to, I'm going to two cities in Sweden, Malmo and Stockholm, and the 2 that I mentioned in Copenhagen. I'm going to be in Helsinki and Finland. I'm going to be in Tromsø and Senja in the north of Norway. And I'm going to be in Estonia. And if I've left any out, Jackie, let's make sure we post them on the Facebook group. And what we're going to do at those sessions is we're first of all going to have a high degree of interactivity. What I mean is that I'm going to be there for you. I'm not going to immediately make the assumption that I know exactly what it is that you need to know about business. I'm going to be there to provide 2-way content. I am also going to do a deep dive into inception marketing. I'm going to show you how really easy it is to massively increase your revenue. It is not difficult. There are strategies that I'm going to show you that you can use in any form of advertising or marketing, whether you're talking internet, social media, direct mail, email, newspapers, free PR. Here, I'll give you one example. Right now, this is one example, and I'm going to share this example with you now, and then I'm going to show you how to use it even better live. Here's the example. Many of you may know this. If you don't, write this down. Go to a website called helpareporterout.com. Jackie, please post that on my Facebook page right now if you would. helpareporterout.com. And this is a really great service where there are reporters, editors, and people putting together news stories and programs where they're looking for information and they're looking for people to help them build stories. Well, this gets really fascinating because when you want to get free PR, I'm going to assume some of you, at least on this call, would like to get free PR. I know I love free PR, and I'm going to show you, well, I'm going to say to you that at helpareporterout.com, you can go there and you can see the stories that people are building right now where they're looking for information, where maybe you could provide them a quote or some statistics or some details, or maybe they want you on their show. And I'll tell you this, I learned about this from Tony Robbins and Chet Holmes when I was a speaker at Business Mastery. Immediately I learned about it. I tried it out. And that Friday, it was really fascinating. I saw that there was a story all about people looking for quirky companies. This one reporter, and I saw that she was looking for it. I wrote to her, and I managed to make one of my companies seem pretty quirky. And if you think about it, the company, you know, originally all our staff was involved with doing Hollywood special effects, and now we were building like super realistic trauma simulation equipment. And then, so that's pretty quirky. And that Friday, I was on CNN for free. So go to helpareporterout.com. At the live previews, I'm going to show you even more specifically how to approach members of the press so that they want to be engaged with you, so that they want to work with you and they want to run your stories. Because the fact of the matter is most people approach the press in pretty typical ways that immediately turn the reporters off. And so I'm going to show you live how to do that. Nonetheless, helpareporterout.com is an absolutely great service. So I hope you'll go sign up for it. And Jackie has put that up on our Facebook page so that you can get the link. In the meantime, I want to leave you with this. I really do hope that I get to connect with you live at some point. I love helping people their businesses. I had this experience one day. I had arrived at a place of having a fairly high degree of business freedom, and so I'd started doing a great deal of travel. And I had the opportunity as a result of this travel to go and do a bunch of relief work. And I've done lots of really great relief work around the world, involved, you know, with school and education projects in Africa and all kinds of different programs. And one of the most impactful moments I ever had was being in Indonesia during a major earthquake. Now, I wasn't actually at the site of the earthquake, so I didn't feel it, but I still felt it. And I traveled to the site of the earthquake, and I managed to do relief work with people that really changed my entire view of why entrepreneurs are doing what we're doing. And I say it to you like this. I don't think that the governments are going to do it. I don't think they're going to change the world the way we need them to. I think that when you elect somebody and they have to spend half their job trying to re-earn their job for the next election, it makes them pretty ineffective. And so for the most part, I just don't think politicians are going to be the ones that get us where we need to go. And frankly, if I could suddenly find a way to magic up a lot of extra time and money for politicians, they'd find a way to waste it faster than ever. Frankly, so would the average person on the street. Give them more time and money, they'll just watch more TV and spend it on cigarettes. You know, or, I'm kidding, but you know, it's just not going to be all that productive. Whereas there is one group of people, there is one segment of the population that if I can travel around the world and teach them business freedom and show them how they can have more time and money, then they will turn that more time and money into growth in their business, which will stimulate economic growth and job creation, or they will turn their business into social enterprises and start taking on task of correcting some of the things that are not really right on our planet today, like our environment and our social inequality and all these other things that are taking place around us all the time. And so when I did that relief work and had this realization, I also recognized something else. I really love connecting with people, and I really love ending entrepreneurial slavery for people. When you started your business, you did not intend for it to be another form of employment, and for most people, that's what being an entrepreneur is, a radical form of self-employment. And what I want to do is help you make the shift from self-employment to full-on entrepreneurship, owning a business, being the master of the universe, and having the time and money to live the life that you really want to live and grow the business you really wanted to grow and fully achieve your purpose. So I really do hope that we get to connect in person at one of my live events one day. Certainly if you're in Northern Europe, we can make that happen real easily over the next couple of weeks. And for the rest of you, I will be all over the planet over the next couple of years. I have done 6 full round-the-world tours, and I'm not stopping anytime soon. So I hope I get to meet you in person. If I didn't get to your question, we had some technical issues with questions and stuff. It's really easy. Post them in the Facebook group, put them on Twitter, and we'll definitely get you your answers. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope we get to connect in person. Have an outstanding week. And make sure you do a roll map. Go back and watch the replay of this. You're going to get an email. It'll give you the replay. And go through the steps. Try just that one roll map. And I'm telling you right now, you will. Whether you have a large company with lots of employees or you're on your own and you're just starting off and putting your name in all the boxes, as you circle things in red and recognize that you are now developing a strategy for moving away from red boxes, your stress levels will begin to come down. And entrepreneurship will start to become enjoyable or more enjoyable. And I hope you have that experience, and I hope you're willing to put in that little extra effort. So, until we meet in person, have an outstanding and amazing week. Thank you very much.